Welcome to another flip video lesson with Mr. Volkman. This flip video lesson will be for chapter 8.1a. And this video is looking at Seattle demonstrations and awareness for minorities. 8.1a is really going to focus in on how minorities were really left out kind of in the cold in terms of how they're treated compared to the majority of citizens living in our state. Specifically, we'll look at the examples through life in Seattle, Washington during the 60s and a little bit into the 70s. And these two pictures are really a great example of this time and how minorities, people from another country, or just, African Americans, people of different skin color, were treated differently than those who were predominantly white. As these posters definitely show. And, this is how demonstrators may have felt when certain people in authority acted towards them. So, first off, we have to realize that there was inequality in the housing market. And this poster definitely describes what I just said. It says, we want white tenants in our white community. Can't say any plainer than that, than who's wanted and who is not wanted. We're also going to talk about job discrimination. How certain jobs only went to certain types of people, and how minorities had to fight for their right to get really any type of good paying job. How most minorities felt can be summed up in this statement. We all fought through 2 world wars. Remember, World War II ended in the late 40s. Why can't everyone get the same job and housing opportunities? Not to mention, we have the Cold War was coming to a close with Vietnam and Korea. We all fought together. Doesn't matter the skin color, we all fought, so why can't we be treated the same? One of the first big demonstrations I want to talk about occurred in the early 1960s. 1,000 people marched for equality in employment, education, and housing in Seattle. They are marching to the West Lake Shopping Center. As you can see from these pictures, all the people who came together. I want you to take a moment and just, kind of observe who do you see in these pictures? What do the marchers have in common? What do they have that's different? I encourage you to jot down these observations in your notes, because remember, this is an educational video. You should be taking notes. The next big demonstration I want to talk about is a pretty well-known event that occurred in the history of Seattle, Washington, and it started in July 1963. Demonstrators were protesting the people that were on a human rights commission. You see, this commission was set up by the city of Seattle, by Mayor Clinton, in fact. And the commission was supposed to address or look at concerns of racial discrimination in the Seattle housing market. Now, all this means is that certain people were not allowed to buy certain homes based upon how they looked. Or another way we could see it is maybe certain people of skin color or ethnicity, the countries they're from, maybe had to pay more for certain houses compared to other people. I'm going to have some mints reconstruct or demonstrate this. One moment, please.
There's some houses for sale over here. Why, yes, there is.
How much?
You can't buy any houses here.
But I got money. I'm a famous skateboarder.
Sorry, they're not for you. That's why the big bell's ringing.
But,
I said they're not for you. Oh, people these days. Do I know those blue plastic skin folk in here?
Hello? Are you those homes for sale?
Oh, yeah. It'll cost you, $3 million.
3 million? I looked online. Houses of this size go for at least 900,000.
Nope. That's my final offer. Take it or leave it.
Oh.
Boy, them green-skinned guys, what do they think they are?
I hear you have homes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. 100.
Yay!
So as you can see by that goofy illustration, racial discrimination. People different skin color not being treated the same, even though really they should. Now, back to this commission. So the Seattle Housing Commission was supposed to look at discrimination in the Seattle housing market. Now here's what made people so upset. Only 2 of the 12 people were African American, which that's really what they were looking at. African Americans were not being treated equally in the housing market. Yet only 2 of the 12 people, you math guys, figure out the percentage of how many people actually were minorities on the commission that was supposed to look at how minorities were being treated. Doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. So what ended up happening is 300 people ended up cramming in to the Seattle City chambers where the Seattle Council would meet. Now this chamber was only supposed to fit 170 people. Well, this sit-in, as it was later called and known as, started with only 4 people staying in the meeting chambers. It ended with 22 people staying 4 days in these chambers. So you had 300 people come in, those 300 people left, and 4 stayed behind, and in the end, 22 ended up staying behind altogether. There you go. Now, this Seattle sit-in, as it's later known, ended when a council member tripped on a protester's leg or foot. Now, the council ordered these people to finally leave because people are, getting hurt. They're taking up space. The police then came and ordered them to leave. Acting Police Chief Charles A. Rouse said the following to these people. He said, "A police record will stay with you all the rest of your lives. I think you could accomplish your purpose in a better manner." No, what was their purpose? Well, it was to bring light to the fact that there was inequality in the housing market. The police then removed the protesters, and you think they'd be all rough and tough. Well, this was written by the Seattle PI reporter Dan Coughlin. He said the demonstrators, some hanging limp in the arms of arresting police patrolmen, others walking, but none showing any signs of seriously resisting, were removed from the foyer outside the city council chamber beginning at about 5:30 p.m. In all, 9 adults, but 13 minors were arrested. Interesting. However, as a result of this Seattle sit-in, and maybe the Seattle Council seeing that people were pretty upset about what was going on, in 1968, the Seattle City Council proposed that criminal penalties should be put on people in the housing market for racial discrimination. Meaning you couldn't not sell a house or make a house more expensive just because someone's skin color was different than yours. There was still protesting that occurred against discrimination of minorities in the housing market, such as this March outside a real estate board meeting. You then had a sit-in at the Picture Floor Plans business. So even though, Seattle Council made this law, there's still problems. It really shows you that really, unless there's a change in someone's heart, people can make laws all they want. Another thing I want to talk about now is SeaTac employment problems. And this is a pretty big one here. 1969 saw a lot of demonstrations for racial equality in hiring minorities. So not only could minorities not get a house they wanted because of how they looked and their skin color, but also they may not get the jobs or the same opportunity for jobs in businesses. Well, people took different tacks in how to get their message across that minorities should have the same opportunity when it came to being hired in jobs. First, you had sit-ins, like we saw in the Seattle housing market, people just sitting with signs. We also have blocking planes, which is a no-no, even in the 1960s. You also had marching. This was marching in the airport. Look at the police here. I think they mean business. And finally, there's just regular demonstrations, yelling, screaming, holding signs, but also that may not have the best impact, as this gentleman is finding out. Once again, I want you to look back at these pictures, and I'm going to go back a few slides, and look at the various people involved in all these protests. What do they have in common? What's different about them? Make observations. Write these observations down in your notes or in your notebook, because it's really important to see what these protesters have in common and what's different about them. Finally, I want to talk about construction. Another area where minorities were felt they weren't getting a fair share when it came to the opportunity to get a job. We have 50-hour vigils where people sat for 50 hours straight to get their point across that minorities should have the same opportunity when it came to construction jobs or apprentice opportunities in construction. We had rallies where people listened to a speaker. This gentleman here, I don't remember his name, came up a lot in my research through the Seattle PI. This gentleman led a lot of rallies and protests about how minorities were not getting a fair shake in the construction world. Finally, you have shutdowns. Actually going to construction job sites and making such a loud mess and getting in the way that work had to stop. Again, this gentleman, this guy, is the same person. Thank you for sitting through and listening to this flip video. I hope you learned something and in some way kind of enjoyed the various stories I told briefly. If there's anything you missed in your fill in the blank outline or in your notes, please make sure you go back. And if you have any questions, please email me. And don't forget, you will be answering questions on Edmodo. Hey, thank you. Have a great night, and I'll see you in class tomorrow. What Mr. Volkman forgot to mention is that with the Seattle sit-in, the people arrested ranged in age from 13 years old to 22. That means some of you guys, your age, were arrested. The Seattle police chief's warning about a criminal record kind of rings a little bit better with that.